Hi, friends. It is good to have you with us for this video. We're going to spend a few minutes here talking about how you can have your marriage thrive during a pandemic and really how your marriage can thrive even after the pandemic is over. I'm Cisco Cotto. My friend, Dr. Robert Moeller, is here. He is a longtime pastor and marriage counselor, television and radio host, and he is the author of several books along with his wife, Cheryl. Their latest book that I want to share here with you, you can find it on Amazon or wherever it is you go to get your books. Their latest book is The Six Hearts of Intimacy: Enjoy Deeper Love and Passion in Marriage. Really fantastic writers and speakers. I've been blessed a lot over the years by Bob and his wife, Cheryl. So it's great to be able to spend a few minutes with him. I want to let you know, if you enjoy what you are seeing and hearing here, you can go ahead and share it. If you're on Facebook, you can subscribe if you're viewing this on YouTube, because we anticipate more of these videos coming out. And Bob, before we get some insight into how our marriages can thrive, you are doing every weekday, Monday through Friday, you're doing kind of a Q&A, if I understand right, where you are answering marriage questions. Tell us about that.
Yes, thank you, Cisco. Each day at 10 a.m. Central Time on our YouTube channel and our Facebook Live we stream is Marriage for Better for Worse. It's a program we dedicate to answering relationship questions from a biblical perspective. And so we deal with marriage issues, that's perhaps the most common, but also some issues that singles deal with, divorce, remarriage, dating, all sorts of relational issues that we can find in our lives that people struggle with. And so we have them simply email their question to bob@forkeepsministries.com, and then I try and get to as many questions as I can in a single day. So we do that 5 days a week, and we're having fun.
Yeah, really, really good insight, really, really good advice. And we're going to get some of that now, specifically focusing on people who are now at home. I hate to say cooped up, but it does kind of feel like that at times with these stay-at-home orders. People have some more time. They have more time for conversation. And so I would guess this is an opportunity for people to maybe have some conversations they ordinarily wouldn't.
That's right, Cisco. I think there's always an upside to down. And right now, given the fact that we have to shelter in place as much as we do, apart from going to the grocery store or the bank or whatever, it's pretty much we're at home. And so people are spending more time with each other than they have perhaps in years together unexpectedly. I often tell couples this is a good dry run at the empty nest syndrome. If you want to know what life is going to be like someday when the kids are gone and maybe you're retired or both of you, well, this is a chance to get a glimpse at that, a preview ahead of time, and see how you'll do. How are things going? Well, I have three ideas that I think would help or could make this a productive time in people's lives. And I don't know necessarily that we'll get a time like this again anytime soon. In fact, I hope not on one level.
Yeah, me too.
It's caused by a pandemic. But on simply the relational level, when will we have this much time to talk again? So I think number one, the first thing a couple can do to thrive is to talk about things that you've never talked about before, or you've only talked about briefly, or perhaps at a surface level. You've never really had the time to discuss the things you may have the time to do now. The first thing I'd recommend, and this is pretty simple, anyone could do this, is listen to each other's entire life story. No matter how many years you've been married, and we have a ministry that works with couples who come in, and I ask them to tell me my life story. Cisco, I can hardly think of a couple where, even if they'd been married 40 years, 50 years, 30 years, where they didn't learn something they didn't know by hearing the other person's life story. There's always pieces that we've never heard about. I mean, even not recently, just not so long ago, Cheryl said to me, "Why didn't you tell me about this? Why am I just hearing about it?" And we've been married 40 years. So, yeah, it wasn't I was withholding it. I had just never thought to bring it up or something triggered it. Anyway, life story, you want to listen to the other person. And by the way, how long does that take? Probably to give your spouse the chance to talk without interruption. And I don't suggest you evaluate, interject your own opinions, argue. Don't do any of that. Just listen. ask for more information. You can clarify, but you can't judge or do anything that would turn it into an argument.
Listening and questions, but not opinion. Durham.
Exactly. You can make observations, just skip the interpretation. Okay. Um, that's going to take 2 to 3 hours to do. And when's the last time you had 2 to 3 hours to sit and talk to each other? You can talk about your earliest recollections of your home. You can talk about the quality of your parents' marriage. You can talk about your spiritual journey. You can talk about any number of things that really will fill in pieces to understand your spouse in a way you never have before. One thing you could do, for example, is ask them, tell me your 3 best experiences by age 18 and your 3 worst. Tell me the 3 best things that you remember up to age 18, and then tell me the 3 worst. And that's probably a question you've never asked each other. And what you'll discover is some things that really, were wonderful experiences. Maybe you should try replicating them. But you'll also hear some things that were terribly sad, if not even traumatic. And that's going to help you understand your spouse's emotional makeup and their actions and reactions to you. Then discover maybe what it is that I call your core pain, the kind of pain that both of you might be carrying. I have this conviction that 80% of the damage to our heart, and our heart is where we give and receive love. Everybody has one. We're created in God's image. He has a heart. He gave us a heart. 80 to 90% of that happens, the structural damage, by age 18 or 19. And then from that point onward, our personality doesn't change that much, but people can step on it. Our spouse can step on it. Our kids can, others. And here's the question I think you can ask each other, not just in a pandemic, but just any day. What is there in your heart that you wish someone knew about and cared about, but no one does? What do you wish in your heart someone knew about and that they cared about it, but no one does? That's a question that I shared that the other day in a radio interview, and the host of the program said, "Wow, that's an inside fastball at 103 miles an hour." He goes, "That will cause you to step back from the plate." That's one of those questions that if you really take it to heart, it's amazing what you may learn.
Do you find, Bob, that there are times that people experience this pain and it impacts their marriage, and yet they're not even aware of the connection there? They don't even grasp the kind of impact that it's having in their relationship.
Yes, we all react to our spouses either by responding to them or reacting to them. I mean, we interact either by responding or reacting. And I think we all know what the word react looks like in our marriage when the spouse reacts. I think we probably get that. Well, that usually is an indication that you have you've triggered some pain in their life. And again, I don't think we inherit much more than we create in a marriage. People bring with them much more than what's been created, with very few exceptions. Is that true? Yes, I think if somebody's been rejected their whole life, particularly when they were young, they're going to be very sensitive to that, even though they don't understand rejection is why they become so impatient if somebody forgets to invite them, or so upset, or they feel excluded, so quickly, or accuse their spouse of ignoring them and that type of thing. They're just very sensitive to rejection. Others were abandoned. They had a father or mother walk out, and maybe they're home. And so whenever the spouse is gone or showing interest in something that takes them away from the home, they're really worried, that you're abandoning me, you're going to leave me. And that can cause you to become very clingy and very, almost suffocating your spouse just out of fear of that. So yeah, I think you're right, Cisco. We often aren't aware at all of how our past, all we know is we get upset over certain things. And I tell people, if there's a pattern, you need to recognize it. If your life's a mess, you need to admit it. If there's a pattern, you need to recognize it. If it's your fault, you need to own it. If it's their fault, you need to confront it. I mean, there's some basic rules. But if, for example, you look back on your life and you've had one kind of relationship train wreck after another, what's the common denominator? It's me. I was involved in all those.
There's all these imperfect people out there, though, Bob.
Yeah, and lightning keeps striking time after time after time. Oh, I understand, that I'm not saying everything's our fault, but maybe we're being attracted to unhealthy people because we've never dealt with the pain in our life, so we do end up having the same script played out.
So you can have these discussions. It's the first item for thriving in your marriage, whether it's a pandemic or otherwise. What about maybe ways to look forward, to look beyond this? What may happen when all of this is, well, we don't know what the new normal is going to be, but whenever we
Right.
get there, we can make some
Well,
plans.
I remember hearing my parents talk about World War II. They were of that era, the greatest generation. And my father was overseas. Was a pilot. He was in combat, and I remember them talking about their dreams for when he would return, and what kind of life would they build when the war was over, and when people would go back to civilian life. At first, my father thought he was going to be a farmer because he had grown up on a farm, and so had my mother. But for family reasons, that didn't pan out. So Dad went and got a teaching degree and went into education, and they took a different, life trajectory than what they thought. But all of us should be thinking, when this is over, what are we going to do, rather than just how do we get through this. I know that the tyranny of the urgent can sometimes take over, but the day is going to come where you can be 5 feet next to someone instead of 6 or 3 feet. It's going to happen. So, what are your goals for when this crisis is over? And I've got some ideas, and I think these would be fun things, as opposed the first part is could be kind of heavy at times, but this is kind of fun. What are 3 things or dreams we wish to accomplish in the years we have left together? What are 3 things we'd love to do in our married life for the years we have left, whether they appear to be many or not so many? I do remind people, it's kind of a sobering thought, that every marriage comes with an expiration date, just like a milk carton. Every date comes, we don't know when that will be. Hopefully long. Well, between now and then, what is it that we've been putting off? Dreams, aspirations, adventures, risks, things that we really wanted to accomplish. What are those? And, start talking about them and listing. Here's another one. What missed opportunities do we still have time to correct? What opportunities have we lost in life or took a pass on that there's still time to correct? And a lot of people have this idea, well, we're getting older, or, we're getting toward retirement, or we are retired. I read the other day the guy who won Britain's Got Talent. It's the equivalent of American Idol. Okay, it's called Britain's Got Talent. A few years ago, I think it was 2017 or whatever, the guy who won it was 98. He was a soloist. He sang. And at 98, he got a new record contract. He signed with a label after he won Britain's Got Talent. And, he grew up singing. He joined the army when he was 15. He stayed in 25 years till he was 40. He sang in the drum and bugle corps. They had different things. And he and his wife sang. They were married 65 years until she passed away. But at 98, he won Britain's. Okay, so there goes all our excuses. We can't do this. We're too old. And, no, we can. There are still opportunities missed that we have time to correct. What would those be? And another question would be, and this isn't as somber as it sounds, what do we hope that our children and grandchildren say about us at our funeral? Today, if that was this week, what would they say? Is it what you want them to say? I mean, beyond the pleasantries and the, just the appropriate dignity of the moment, what do you wish they would say in a heartfelt way that would really come from their soul?
Yeah, parents really do. But parents have an opportunity here that I think should be taken advantage of. If you have young kids still at home, whether it's games, whether it's just hanging out, family meals, it seems like this does give us an opportunity to make some memories that we might not otherwise make.
Yes, I remember back in the mid 90s, I got laid off where I was working, and I worked from home for about 3 years, 3.5 years. It's actually when our marriage ministry got launched and we started writing. But I was home for the first time with my children. I had 4 small children at that point. And I still look back, though that was 30 years ago now or so. I can remember that era better than any other era raising my children. And I remember more wonderful memories with them, playing baseball in the yard in the lot behind our house, or football, whatever, with my boys. We bought a small gas engine airplane that we would fly around in circles. In those days, they weren't radio controlled. That was too expensive. So it was on a string until you got so dizzy you fell over. But I coached my son's Little League, the baseball team. So many wonderful memories from that time. And yet it was a time of hardship. I wasn't certain about my income. I was working for myself, living here in Chicago, 4 kids, a mortgage and everything else. That was kind of scary at times, but we made it. But that time, I'm sure you've heard people say time is the new wealth, that you can always get more money, but you can't get any more time at all. So yes, you're right, especially your children, whatever age they are, if you can spend time playing, hanging out, having fun, doing goofy things, camping in the yard, whatever you want to do, they will always cherish that. They will always remember. And, the same is true for grandparents, too, that though you might not be able to travel about freely because of the restrictions, you can every day go on Skype or Zoom or WhatsApp or whatever. Just before we talked today, I talked to my 2 British grandchildren outside of London, and we had a fun time on Zoom. Yeah, it was Zoom, I think, that we talked on. And we're playing Battleship online. So, and my granddaughter is 6 and my grandson is 8 or 9, and they love to play Battleship, and we set it up, and you can play Scrabble, you can play Uno. I mean, now endless number of possibilities.
Yeah, we played Risk with one of my nieces remotely, and it was a little weird because she lives about a mile and a half down the road from us, but we're not able to see each other in person. But we were able to set up a Zoom conference and then also the app, and so there are, I think, unique memories that are being made now. Well, let's touch on this. So you have discussions. You've mentioned that you have discussions that you can have that you wouldn't ordinarily have. You also have some goals that you can set for your future. What's it going to look like after this pandemic? What about maybe reflecting on some of those experiences with the kids or other family members, some things that maybe we're grateful for now that we
Yes.
wouldn't otherwise recognize?
Well, the third thing I think we all can do is identify and celebrate the things that we now see can never be taken from us. Some things have been taken from us right now. A great amount of freedom to travel and go places, see a movie, whatever. A lot, to go to school even, go to church, for heaven's sake. Can't even do that except online or in a parking lot with your windows rolled up like a 1950s drive-in. That's about it. It's always good to be reminded of the things that can't be taken from us. And let's look at how to arrive at that. I mean, number one, I think couples could list the things that you have lost or have given up. Just make a list. The things we've lost during this pandemic and this shutdown. What are the things we've given up that we like, that were important to us, that we enjoy, that are meaningful? What have we had to give up? Number two, list the things that you could possibly lose if things go on much longer, and that the new normal may require of us all, economically, socially, and politically, and just every other way. What will the new normal that we can kind of start to guess at least for the near future, what could we possibly lose then, or have to give up, or still not be able to gain back? And then number three, the things that can never be taken from you despite pandemics, job losses, social, economic upheavals. Cisco, it's interesting. During the Great Depression, the divorce rate actually went down.
I did not know that. I would have assumed the opposite.
Most people would. And I probably did at one time as well, but it actually dropped. During this, the worst economic hardships of the last century, people discovered they needed each other. People discovered it was easier to cope with a crisis in community than it was, to separate and be alone. And in many ways, survival became a greater goal than fulfillment. It was just to get through this. My mother was both my parents were raised out in the dusty Dakotas during the Dust Bowl. They lived through that time, and hearing their stories, it was really pretty hard sometimes. The deprivation got to be pretty bad. But people didn't divorce as much. And the other interesting thing is crime went down during the Great Depression. And
Another thing that you would have thought would be exactly opposite.
exactly,
Yeah.
that hard, because we're often told it's economic deprivation that drives crime. Well, not necessarily, because at least during those days, crime went down and divorce went down. So what does that mean? It meant people discovered something in that time of severe hardship that became precious to them, and that not even 25% unemployment, which is what it was at its worst, could take from them. So what are some of those things? Well, obviously we start with our faith, that our faith in God, our fellowship, our worship, our trust in Him, that can't be taken from us, no matter how hard things get. And the New Testament is filled with Paul writing from prison and horrible deprivations, and yet rejoice always, I say, in the Lord, rejoice. When I was a young pastor in Minneapolis, I had in my congregation a man in his 70s at the time, trending to 80, but in his mid-70s. He was with the original group of Wycliffe Bible translators.
Okay.
And for viewers who may not be familiar, that's a group that has attempted to translate the Bible into every known language, identifiable language on earth, and there's thousands of them, so it's been quite a task. But it started, you know when it started? The summer of 1930, which was the very depth of the Depression, right after the stock market. And this gentleman told me in 1929-30, they met in Arkansas on a farm, sitting on kegs of nails, or kegs that held nails. And Cameron Townsend, who was the founder of this translation, this vision, taught them the basics of linguistics. Okay, what worse time could you possibly imagine to say, we're going to go into all the world and we're going to translate every jungle language and remote people group into their own language and give them. And Wycliffe, by the way, is responsible for spreading literacy throughout the whole world, because many of these times they've never had their own language in print. And when they do the Bible, they give the government the findings, and they're able to publish, this language and all its rules and tenses. Amazing what they've done. Started during the summer of 1930 on a hog farm in Arkansas on top of kegs of nails. So our faith can't be taken from us. And economics is cannot thwart the will of God. Number two, the love of our family and friends. No amount of disruptions and isolation and whatever else need not diminish in any way the love we have for one another, and how important that really is to each other, and the relationships that we have with one another as parents, as children, as all the different things. It's a time to discover what's really can't be taken from you. Those two things. And then third is your attitude in life. Yes, pain is inevitable, misery is optional. And so we don't have to live in misery each day during this. We get to choose that. The pain we don't necessarily get to choose, but how we respond to it is something that we do get to choose. I remember years ago when I was in junior high, our church took a trip to the boundary waters of Minnesota, which is 1 million acres of pristine lakes between Canada and Minnesota. It's a national park. No motorized boats. You can't build anything there. It's very rustic. You can only canoe and go to a campsite. Well, we went with I was with a group of junior high kids, I think ninth grade, about 30 of us. We went on this trip, and then bad weather set in. And you couldn't be out in a canoe when the waves were 3, 4 feet high on these lakes, and they're big. So we had to just shelter in place for like 3 days. It just rained. It was miserable, to be in a tent and tarp and trying to cook out when it's raining. Just try that for 3 or 4 days.
Try that for a few hours.
Yeah, for a few hours. Well, at the end of it, Cisco, we were 30 miles behind where we were supposed to be. To get back to the base camp, the vans, go home. We were 30 miles off our schedule, and we had only 1 day left. And I'll never forget the leader of that group, the youth pastor that summer, the guide, gathered us all together and said, tomorrow we are going to go 30 miles. Now, if you've ever been in a canoe for any period of time, a river maybe, but just simply canoeing, 30 miles and then getting out and carrying 50-pound packs and canoes over portages, that's a bad day, is what it is. He said there's one rule for tomorrow. He said, you cannot complain. He said, tomorrow we're all going to agree nobody complains. If you say anything, it has to be something positive. Okay? He said, tomorrow, no complaint. Well, he said, we'll never get there unless we follow this rule. And I'm not really embellishing this story very much at all. We got up at 6 a.m. and we canoed till midnight. I remember we were canoeing in a V on the lake under the moonlight so we could see each other, but we had no illumination. Okay. What would that be? That's 18 hours of canoeing? And that whole day, none of us complained. Nobody did complain. We all just kind of swallowed it. We had to think of creative ways. So we'd say, for example, boy, my mother sure cooks good. I mean, when we were sitting around eating these rations or whatever, we had to turn everything into something that, but I remember that day as one of the most meaningful, enjoyable, significant days growing up. It was a day that I learned more about myself and others. What an education. We got there at 1 a.m. or whatever. We did have two guys rush past us going the other direction at one of our portages, and kind of, what's this about? They just ran past us. And later, when we got to base camp, the county sheriff was waiting and said, did you see a couple of guys while you were out there in the woods? They're wanted.
So I have to ask you, have you ever gotten in a canoe since?
Yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I tipped over in one last summer. I went back to Minnesota. I said, listen, I've done this before. I got in the canoe with a guy who hadn't canoed. And this was a river that was fast. And I said, just listen to me. We'll be fine. Well, within about 30 minutes, we were in the water, soaking wet for the rest of the day. We survived it, and I've lived to tell about it. But hey, yeah, I just want to make the point that pain is inevitable, misery is optional.
Yeah, well, it's great stuff, Bob. I mean, I just appreciate it. I think all of that is really, really good, and not necessarily the kind of advice that people are getting as they're just sort of all cooped up and wondering how to turn this into a positive instead of it just being the negative things that are coming out of this. I think we really can come on the other side, those of us who are married, with marriages that are even stronger. So thank you. Let me repeat, take time to discuss things you never talked about, set new goals for your future for when this is over, and identify and celebrate the things that can never be taken from you. Dr. Robert Moeller, thank you. I always love seeing you and talking with you. I always know I'm going to get some good advice. So thanks, Pastor.
Thank you, Cisco. It's great to see you again.
Okay, and that should allow me to cut it.
All right.
That's awesome, Bob. Thank you.
All right.
I would never get in a canoe again.
Yeah, it was It was hard. It
Yeah,
was
I bet.
hard, but we sang a lot while we were carrying things over portages, and
Yeah,
it was just amazing how attitude is infectious,
yeah,
one way or the other.
great.
And it turned out to be fun. I hope I didn't go on too long with
It
these
was good.
stories.
No, it was all great. I'm going to package it up with some of the other ones, and I'm debating whether um, to release one at a time or just to do a binge. Because not all of them are going to be. Not everyone's going to want something on marriage. Not everyone's going to want something on kids. Not everyone is going to want something on working from home, and so I'm debating whether to just kind of put them all out at once. So
Are you doing that
we'll
on
see.
your YouTube channel or what?
Yeah, yeah, that's where I'm going to put it. Yeah, yeah. So I'll let you know when I do it.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I will.
I think I would probably vote with the latter of doing everything at once and letting
Yeah.
people choose.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the culture we are now. We're the binge culture where we just kind of want to pick and choose what we want to watch. So
Have you seen The Chosen?
yeah, yeah, we've watched him. It's been really, really good stuff.
Man, that's
Hmm.
some of the best
Yeah,
Christian writing and avoiding the hokey factor,
yeah, right,
in terms of telling the life of Christ and
right. Yeah, really good.
um, really amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
The
they've done a
brilliant
great job with
writing,
it.
I think.
Yeah,
Those guys should really win some type of award for that. That
I
is
agree.
really a monumental.
Yeah, I agree.
And they're
Yeah,
going to do, I hope to do, they said 7 more seasons.
yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, the acting, the writing, the cinematography. I mean, everything for so much Christian media is not all that great, and so to see stuff that's really first class it was encouraging.
Well, he thinks they just need, I listened to him last night, his appeal. I think he says he wants to reach 1 billion people with
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'll tell you, he's reaching a lot of them.
Yeah, and he said he only needs 10 million per season or something,
Yeah.
he thinks. He can probably do it on that, which by Hollywood standards is
Nothing.
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 Have you seen, I'll let you go with this. Have you
Yeah,
seen,
actually, I got to go to a church membership class here.
have you seen my son's, are you pastoring again or not?
I am a part-time preaching pastor at a church called Village Bible Church in Sugar Grove. They have a campus in Aurora and Plano. And I moved back to Aurora with no church job, left the church, felt like God was leading us out here. And 10 days later, Village Bible Church had hired me. It
Wow.
was just insane. It was totally the Lord. And so I'm a part-time teaching pastor there. And there is a chance that they're going to be starting a new campus in Naperville. And if so, they're very seriously considering using me as the planter to kind of get that campus
Wow.
started. But
Now,
the
who are they
pandemic put a
affiliated?
pause on that.
Are they independent?
They are independent. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's good. Yeah. Great church, great leadership. They really, really are good.
Has Oak Park found a pastor yet?
No, they were just at the point where they were going to begin interviews, and then this hit. And so
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how delayed it's been. By now, they need to just get on Zoom conferences with guys. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
just the way it's going to be. Moody Church hired their guy. He delivered
Who is that?
his name is Philip Miller. He's a guy who was local here, but he was actually pastoring out in Washington State when they hired him. Great pedigree. I mean, ordained in Chuck Swindoll's church, experience at Christ Community Church here in the Chicago area. Younger guy, took over a church in Washington State that had had a pastor for 41 years. So he has experience in taking over for long tenured pastors. But he gave his candidating sermon on video, and then the church members had to vote.
Really?
Never got to question him, never got to interact with him at all. It was like, hey, here he is preaching, trust us.
Well, I'm glad. They've gone a long time. Hasn't
Yeah.
it been like 4 years?
Oh, longer than I think it's closer to 6 now. I mean, it's been a long time.
Oh, yeah. That's going to really take a toll on a
Yeah, it
church
is.
when you go that long without
Yeah,
it.
it is.
And then Willow Creek got a new pastor.
Oh, did they? Oh, I didn't know that they had yet. Okay, good.
We got a guy from Michigan. He actually went to my seminary thing. I think he went to Asbury.
Okay.
And he had a multi-campus church in the Lansing area.
Okay.
So he has just started.
That's great. Yeah, it's
But Harvest doesn't have anybody yet, do they?
No, I don't think Harvest has officially even started their search. I think they hired Vanderblomen, but they haven't gotten to the point of even posting a profile. Because this hit right as they were getting ready to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
It's going to be tough. I have some friends working there, and it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be.
All right, I'm going to get to my membership meeting. Thanks, brother.
All right. Take
Really
care.
appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.